What's your best story of a moment when someone displayed a complete lack of common sense? For Earth Day, the company I work for was giving away free seeds to plant to grow trees. When I offered it to one woman, she said PFFT, as if a tree can actually grow from a seed. I had no possible way to respond to her other than silence. As a nurse, I have so many. You'd be surprised at the lack of common sense among nursing students and or doctors. A student nurse came down and said, well, Mr. G didn't eat much of his breakfast today. He didn't even seem to want to chew it. Went up to check on Mr. G. He is sitting supine, bedhead raised, pulseless, purple in the face, no breath sounds, clearly deceased, with cereal and scrambled eggs pouring out of his mouth. One time I was at a grocery store and I was looking at those heated things that keep chicken warm. I wondered how hot it was, so I touched it. I got a blister. My mom freaked out one time when the entire computer screen turned blue. She called me from upstairs to come down and fix it. I looked at it for a second and then tapped the mouse. She had highlighted the whole screen. No less than 3 times have I had to fix my mom's computers because she didn't know, forgot that you have to turn on both the tower and the monitor. And one of those time was at a big company whose IT guy couldn't figure it out either. 2 kids who shall remain unnamed were doing science when the older sibling was ready to drop a 5-pound dictionary on the younger sibling's head because an older kid had convinced them that you could know all words instantly with this method. They were told the higher the drop the better the result. The older sibling was on 2nd floor with younger sibling about 12 feet below. Yes, the experiment was halted by adults before execution. The other day at work, my counterpart misplaced his ID badge. We eventually found it, but not before I asked him, do you want me to call it? That's when you chuckle softly at your own joke. A friend and I were making orange juice yesterday when he decided to also put the orange peel in the blender because throwing the orange peel away is a waste of good food. Result, a real waste of good food. My friend always eats the orange peel with the orange, as if it was an apple. A plug for something I wanted to unplug was stuck in the outlet. I didn't want to snap the cord by pulling on it, and my delicate princess hands were beginning to hurt from gripping the plug and pulling. Suddenly, I thought, wait, I'll just stick my finger between the prongs and jimmy it out that way. In case you didn't know, a plug half stuck in the outlet still has electricity running between the prongs. Now, not knowing, around age 10, that there was electricity running between the prongs is one thing, but the fact that I shocked myself using this exact same thought process a decade later, I think that's a lack of my own common sense. Momentary lapse of common sense, but in your defense, it's a dumb design. Most other countries either recess the sockets or insulate part of the prongs so that sort of thing can't happen. A friend and I were playing COD, split screen, and I was absolutely destroying him. Then my mum walked in and asked, which screen are you? We both said top screen. Turns out he thought he was my screen for the past 15 minutes. When my girlfriend was 15, she blew up some balloons for her friend's birthday and was confused when they didn't float. She was genuinely confused when she heard that you needed helium to keep them aloft. BT engineer came out to investigate noise on my line causing my broadband to go off. There was a loud crackling when you picked up the house phone. Murphy's Law meant the day he came, the noise was almost gone and now very faint, but while listening for it, he spotted a retractable phone extension I wasn't using but had out for troubleshooting purposes and said, that's 15 meters long, it should be 10 at the longest. Confused, I said, okay, but it was just to rule out the extension I'm using, to see if the noise was still on. But it's too long, that would explain the noise you're hearing. I said no, I get it on the current one as well. He replied, well, I can't hear it now. I said yeah, it seems better today. He went back to it'll just have been your extension. It's way too long. I was like, dude, listen to me. That extension was in my cupboard and not being used when this fault started. It was only after speaking to your tech support, they suggested I try another extension. But it's too long though. Yes, that is true. But I was just checking to see if I got the exact same noise with it, which I did. It's not like if you have an 11-meter cable the phone suddenly starts cracking loudly. But it's too long, that's what would have been causing the crackling. This goes on for about 5 minutes while he's listening and the crackling suddenly comes back. See, I say desperately, Yeah, but your extension is too long, as I keep saying. Stunt. I pick it up, roll it in and put it back in the cupboard it came from. Look, it's not currently connected. You can still hear the noise. That proves it wasn't just caused by an extension that's too long, and as I keep telling you, that wasn't plugged in when this started. He thought about this for about 10 long, silent seconds and then shook his head. I don't know what to tell you. The maximum length for an extension is recommended to be no more than 10 meters. I lost my crap. Called him a freaking moron, or something. I was really annoyed, and this was a while ago, and told him to get the frick out of my house. Next thing, I got a bill for £175 for an unnecessary engineer call out due to a fault caused by my equipment. I was boiling water for mac and cheese one time and I forgot how a strainer worked, and I poured boiling water all over my legs and feet. Needless to say, each time I use the strainer I double check that it is over the sink. Like when you make stock and pour the stock down the sink and keeps the bones and veggies. Frick. I was building a fire in a Franklin stove, big cast iron thing, lid opens on top. I was also trying out old bottles of liquors lying around. I took a mouthful of ancient peppermint schnapps, found it gross, and spit it out into the fire. Thank God for my husband's Spider-Man-like reflexes. He grabbed the back of my shirt and yanked me back, away from the fireball that erupted from the stove. The ends of my hair burnt as it swung forward. I would have blinded myself. I read that as Firelink Shrine and was so confused. Once I waited at the bottom of an escalator for a woman to get off so I could go up. She stared at me pretty weird. The other time I waited outside for a glass door to slide open. In my defense, it was a new door and lacked handles. With a group of people forming behind me that they were stuck outside because the store was closed when there were people inside. She probably thought you were going to rob her LMAO. When I was young, I wanted to see if my pinky would fit in the sharpener. It did, and I rotated my finger and half a nail came off. No. My friend spent 10 minutes looking around for his phone even though he had it in his hand. We were telling him to call it and he was trying to phone it but complaining it was engaged. The penny eventually dropped. That's okay. I sometimes try to adjust my glasses when I'm wearing contacts. My sister, all the time. She used my athlete's foot spray as deodorant for 2.5 weeks. Never bothered to read the can. Used vaginal cream on her face for weeks because she never bothered to read the tube. One of my favorites. After she had been living with me for 2 months. How do you not have any toothpaste in the bathroom, she asks. How have you lived here for 2 months and not known where the toothpaste is? Well, now you know what she'd been using for her vaginal cream, at least. Worked at an architecture firm. We would always complain about how the modeling software crashed all the time. Clearly not having used said software, our operations manager asked what it meant when it crashed. As in, does that mean the building you're modeling collapses or something? Not having used said software, or any software ever for that matter. I once stood in front of the front door to my house for a few minutes, wondering why the door wouldn't unlock. It took me those few minutes to realize that I was pointing my car keys at the door and pressing the unlock button, wondering why that wasn't opening the door. And that was the last time you drank tequila. A kid at my elementary school got sent to the hospital after he got injured playing in the school field with his friends. They were throwing steel-tipped darts at each other, and one dart hit the kid right in the eye. I don't think he died, but we didn't see any one-eyed kid in school afterwards either. When a drunk me tried to light a cigarette on a kitchen stove and ended up burning my hair. Should have kept the cigarette in my mouth after lighting it, not before. I remember a family camping trip where me and my cousins all forgot to bring lighters, and for some reason we didn't think to use the campfire lighters, so we all started sticking our heads in the fire to light our cigarettes. Using a stab blender at about 14. Was staring at the blades on it and thought it would be a good idea to touch the circle in the center of the blade where it mounted to the shaft. It really wasn't. Wound up with 10 stitches. My friend was in a dimly lit club, and she wanted to check the time. She noticed a clock on the wall, and used her smartphone screen as a lamp to see it better. I guess the club wasn't the only thing that was dimly lit. One of my friends was selling his car. It was an old shitbox car, but it still was worth about the same amount he purchased it for. One person bid it for it to be purchased at half the original, and another bid for the original price. The third and final bid for just under double original price. Done deal, right? My friend sold it to the guy who bid half price. All three guys were strangers, but the reason my friend sold it to the lowest bidder was because the lowest bidder was begging him to be a nice guy, basically trying to take advantage of him. My friends advised him not to listen, but he still chose the lowest bidder, passing up a good $10,000 if he'd chosen the highest bidder. A month later, he came up to me and said, "I am such a stupid." It was the last day of school. The high school science teacher had some leftover zinc powder from chemistry class, and since the seniors were graduating he decided to just go out and burn the rest of it. Long story short, it's starting raining and parts of our agricultural department burned down. Teacher got fired. This one time when I was a kid, I asked my mom what would happen if I'd bite on a glass. She told me it would be really dangerous. Needless to say, what happened 2 minutes later. A group of friends and I were watching Apollo 13 on the VCR back in '95. It got to the scene where oxygen levels were getting messed up and Kevin Bacon was having trouble thinking straight. One of my idiot friends, we'll call him Chuck, says, "Oh my god, he's illiterate," and he meant it. He thought an Air Force officer had faked his way through high school, college, officers training school, and astronaut training all while not being able to read. Maybe he thought Deep Space Homer was a documentary. I regularly grab the barrel of my curling iron to see if I've turned it off. I'm not typically a stupid woman, but I do this without thinking maybe once a week. My husband says I have lost my hair curling privileges. I work at a convenience store, which basically means I'm near constantly in contact with people whose mere survival leaves me baffled. Among the best, a woman who came in to use the restroom. It's out of order that day, and I tell her that. What's that mean? UHH. It means it's not working. So I can't use it? Number. Why not? This woman drove here. There's one guy who comes in every now and then who's banned for shoplifting and knows it. I've had to kick him out of the store around 6 times, including tonight, because he thinks I don't know who he is. I legally can't sell beer past midnight, which means that every night I see 4 or 5 people who try and argue the time with me at 12:03. The countless regulars I see that I have to explain the card terminal to every single time. There are people that come in, ask me a question, and then apparently lose interest in the conversation. Every response to my first answer is how my boss is one of these people. Oh yeah, and the couple people who have finished with the gas pump and instead of hanging it up just kinda left it on the ground. Last year in Shanghai, someone got trapped between the external doors that open when the subway train arrives and the doors of the subway train. Everyone stood there and stared. No one alerted the staff with the flags and no one called the alarm. The train moved and ripped the poor lady apart. From watching a lot of dashcam crash videos, it seems like helping strangers isn't big in China. My sister-in-law was cooking dinner and decided to check to see if the oil in the pan was hot with her finger. Bonus, she did it twice. This woman is an attorney. Well, she won't be my attorney. When the bagger at the grocery store packs the hot things in with the cold frozen things, or the eggs, soft fruits and veggies, breads on bottom. I know it's nitpicky, but I end up rebagging once I get to the car. I would chalk that up more to I make $8 an hour and don't give a crap than a lack of common sense. I saw a cop throwing road flares that were being used to close off a lane into dry brush on the side of the road. A fire started. My homie and I were in a parking lot in his car. I tell him pull up to the trash can so I can throw some trash away before we roll out. He proceeds to hit the gas and drive forward, not even noticing the car is struggling to move forward. He then punches it and the car goes up and down like a lorry, so we get out and take a look. Now mind you, this wasn't a 10-second ordeal. He was gassing it for a solid minute or 2 before punching. Totally oblivious. We get out and see he drove up and over a curb stop and is now stuck with it under his car. Took like 10 minutes to drive over it. Never did get to the trash can. Watching a show with my friend a few years ago, detectives found a body and took it to the morgue. So they called him John Doe throughout the episode. Later on, They found the victim's girlfriend wandering through the woods, catatonic and in shock. So they took her to the hospital. Also no id, won't give her name. So, Jane Doe, my friend turned to me with complete and utter amazement and said, how did the hospital know she was the dead guy's girlfriend if they haven't even been identified yet? To which I replied that they hadn't figured that out yet. They must have. Otherwise why would they be calling them by the same last name? Not a story but a general common sense point. Why are some people so stupid that they decide a doorway is a good place to stop and have a discussion? Doorways are to walk through, idiots. Stairs too. When I was in grade school, I once wondered what would happen if I tried to bend a pencil over the corner of my desk. It snapped. I probably stared dumbfounded at that desk and my sudden lack of a usable pencil for at least a good 10 seconds before I realized no duh, that was what would happen. I was at a restaurant with some people that I was in drumline. The check came and this freshman says, what do I do now, looking at the ticket? I remember the first time I'd have to pay my check. I went to homecoming with a guy and completely didn't realize my parents weren't there to pay for dinner. I wasn't expecting my date to pay, so I got my parents to drop off money. Okay, so I'm a physician working on a hospital in a third world country. I smoke. Yes, awful. I know. So I usually have a lighter on me. This first year intern comes and asks me to borrow it. He didn't smoke so I thought it was weird, but hey, whatever. So I gave it to him. Moments later I walk down the aisle and I spot him torching the nozzle of an oxygen output so he could fit an oxygen plastic tube on it. Of course, oxygen is flammable. So I tell him, you do realize that's a terrible idea, right? He stopped. We didn't all blow up. It was a good day. Ex trying to get toast from a toaster with a knife. I tell her not to. She yells, well, how do I get the toast out? So I waltz up and unplug it for her. My physics teacher in high school told me they make toasters specifically so people can do exactly that and not get zapped. Because toaster makers know that people are stupid. So at a camping site I saw this kid trying to light a gas stove. He fricked up and the gas started burning straight from the bottle. Flamethrower style. So of course in this situation you throw it up into the air, run away and watch it burn your tent down. Freaking idiot, made my weekend. A couple of weeks ago I was getting ready to drive home from Denver. As I am getting ready to leave my friend's apartment I make sure I have packed away everything. I panic cause I cannot find my phone charger. I proceed to spend the next 2 hours searching the entire apartment for it. I have to leave and decide to leave it there. I had managed to put my charger in my pocket and forgot about it. I spent 2 hours looking for something that was in my pocket the whole time. I once couldn't find my car keys for 2 days. They were hanging at a height about meter left of where they were supposed to be. This kid was playing with electricity in science class. They were learning about short circuits and were instructed to not put the machine above, like, 1 volt. So of course me and my friend, this kid and his friend turned it up to 12. Sparks flew. Watching another apprentice try to lift a 10,000 pound forklift using a 1,000 pound come-along strapped to a beam rated for 2,000 pounds. While sitting on the beam, some Willy Coyote antics. I would love a crappy artist's rendering of this scenario. I'm sure I've ranted about this before because it's the worst story ever. But when I was a cashier at a pet fish store, a woman didn't want to buy food for her new goldfish. When I asked her what she would feed it then, she shrugged and in some kind of accent was like, water. What? I was bored at work, electronics assembler, and I was playing with this blob of molten solder. It was so pretty and so shiny, silvery and round. Just the most fascinating thing ever. I just had to pick it up. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.